Alright, this is a sequel to the last video. I think my theory was correct on the nozzle becoming in too close proximity to the bed. This is what my filament looked like when I removed the Bowden tube. I had no problem removing it, and this was not melted, and the back pressure did not enter the Bowden tube. However, I do think I have a small clog on my Microsd metal hot end. What I'm doing right now is I pulled this out, and this seems to be moving freely, so I'm in the process of removing this filament here. I think it's already gone through the extrusion motor. Yeah. So I should be, let me set the camera down a second. I should be free to pull that out now. And then I'll show you guys a very easy, quick way, very painless way of removing most clogs on the stock hot end, or an E3D, or the Microsd. So let me get that tubing out, if I can find my stand. And as you can see, I had some filament come out of the nozzle, so I don't think I have much of a clog, but it's enough resistance that, and I think the resistance was because the nozzle was touching the bed. It was level to begin with. Let me set this down. I should be able to pull this excess filament out. May have to actually, let me see. I don't think it's quite past the stepper motor gear yet, so let me move it a little bit more so I can freely pull it out of the Bowden tube. And it is coming out. Yeah, I still had a little bit more to go. So let me get this tube out and I'll be right back, and we'll address the clog. Okay, we're back. Before I forget, print out some of these clips. You can find them on Thingiverse. The locking mechanism on your Bowden tube coupler, if you're having the problem, if you do get a little back pressure and your Bowden tube is popping out, this clip will, in theory, it's always worked for me anyway, it keeps that release mechanism expanded. I need, one of mine broke. I need to print one for the hot end. As you can see, I don't have one here. I usually do, but that just goes right there, and it keeps that in place. So I've determined everything is good with my extruder stepper. The gear's tight and in the correct position. Got my filament out. I just had to advance it a little bit more. So after I get rid of this clog, I can reinsert the Bowden tube, level it properly with the bed heated, and we can proceed. Another thing I wanted to show you, some people have had problems with their glass plate not being perfectly level. Some have no problem, but I'm one. My printer does have the slight depression here in the middle, so when you're leveling the bed, everything's good on the corners, but right here in this area, you may not get good adhesion. So I took the advice of another YouTuber. Just take a small piece, maybe 3x3 would be big enough, of painter's tape that comes with the printer, and just place it directly in the center of the bed. And I think this, I don't know if it has to do with the glass bed itself or if it's the aluminum, the large area heated bed being made of aluminum. But in either case, that should fix the problem, and then you should have a level surface, not only on the corners but in the center. So to unclog this, just get yourself about 10 inches, 12 inches of just scrap filament. I've got my nozzle set to 220. Well, it's actually 221. A little hotter than normal, just to make sure that any plastic that's in there is melted. And see if I can do this and film. Straighten this out a little bit. It's got a bit of a curve, and I've got to get it into the Microsd throat. And yeah, I've got some yapping dogs again. So with my nozzle at 221 degrees, I'm just going to insert some spare filament. I can already feel the clog in there. I hope it's not in the heat break. Shouldn't be. Sometimes it's just hard to get it in there. There we go. And then watch for it to come out the bottom. I'm just forcing it in there. There we go. I felt the clog release. We've got filament coming out nice now. At this point, when you feel that resistance go and then your filament starts coming out, reduce your temperature down to about 170, 160. So go to control, temperature, and I'm going to turn the nozzle down just under where the melting point is for PLA. Okay, 161 is close enough. Now I'm just going to wait for the nozzle to come down. And this will, any leftover plastic in there, it will solidify. It'll stick to the piece that's in here. And I've heard this called the nuclear option. So once it's cooled down to 160, then you just firmly pull this straight out, and that should remove your blockage. Reconnect your Bowden tube, and you're ready to go. I guess I'll go ahead and show some of the other upgrades that, in my opinion, are a must. Of course, the large leveling knobs, especially when you're running the bed at high temperatures and you need to adjust fine adjustments on the fly. It's very hard to get to the stock leveling knobs. And another thing about it, having a larger knob, you can get finer adjustments, so that's a plus. As far as spools go, I've tried many different spools. I tried the stock one, I've tried parametric spools like that, but I found the best thing that works for me is one of these that allow the spool to, let me grab the spool, just allow it to ride on 4 bearings. I'm not quite sure the size of the bearings. I think they were 6mm inner diameter. I got this off the Thingiverse too, and I'm sure in the description they will. So you print those. You print that out It's adjustable length for different size spools. The only problem you might have is when the spool is getting very low, when it's feeding the filament into the extruder. I have a few times the spool gets light, and I have had it come off of this, but plenty of WD-40 on the bearings and working the bearings until it's spinning very freely seems to help. And when you load your spool, do not have your filament, if you're using this type of spool holder, make sure your filament is coming this way and underneath and into the extrusion gear, and your chances of the spool coming off the spool holder are very low, because it does become tipsy when when you're running low on filament. If you're pulling it from the bottom, it's unlikely that it's going to come off this holder. If you're pulling it from the top, however, it's going to be pretty easy for that to come off. I'll show 3 more of my upgrades really quick. I got the Microsd to SD card extender, and on Thingiverse there are several different designs. I opted for this one because it covers everything nicely and fits the stock screws. Because it's in black, it may be a bit hard to see, but I can use a normal size SD card. It does block access to your USB port. Not so much because this is covered, it's the ribbon cable adapter. It's just wide enough that unless you modify and cut some plastic off your micro or your mini USB, you're not going to be able to get it in there. As you can see, I drilled a hole in mine, so I was hoping to have access to both SD card and USB. That way I could use a tablet, and I have a Windows tablet with Repetier host, just for manual control of my XYZ, fans, extruder, heater, and so on, instead of going through the menus. But the ribbon cable on that prevents that. But I do like having a full-size SD card. I also made a light rail, and just used white LED strips, and then I connected that to anywhere from a 9 to a 12 volt wall wart power supply. It illuminates it enough that even when all the lights are off in the office, I can see everything fine. But I think what made the biggest impact, other than the Swiss hot end, was this right angle brace. If you're doing very tall prints, the gantry will wobble just enough that you'll see artifacts as your print gets higher. It'll be nice and smooth down here, and say you do a 300 millimeter tall print, as you come up the print, you'll notice it gets rougher and rougher, and you'll start seeing some overhangs and artifacts. This brace helps prevent that, and I will try to locate that on Thingiverse and provide a link. You will have to change the direction of this plate right here. Just turn it sideways, or it'll be in the way of the bracket. So yeah, you just take these bolts out of the T-nuts, turn it 90 degrees, reinsert it, tighten it down, and then use M4 bolts and T-nuts to attach this brace. I could have went with the fancy gantry support kit that uses, you know, the aluminum steel rods, and you know, it's got clamps here on each corner and clamps here, but I thought that was overkill. It kind of makes it hard to get in here and clean the bed, and to me it seemed like the rods would just be in the way. Ever since I've installed this hefty brace, I don't see any artifacts as my print gets taller. So anyway, after using this printer for so long, and you know, like I said, maybe about 400 hours of printing continuously, these are my tips. I think my longest print was a subwoofer box, 6.5 days, so almost an entire week. But it did come out nice. So yeah, so I hope that helps some people. Later.